Hi all, let's talk about the student diversity activity you've got coming up next. For this, students will create a class activity, a survey, questionnaire, game that would be appropriate for the students in their intended level and subject areas. In other words, think elementary, secondary, math, music. The activity should provide a classroom teacher with further information about their students' background, interests, learning styles, demographic, family dynamics, prior learning experiences, all those types of things that are important for us to know as a teacher in order to design our student-centered lessons. A two-page written analysis will be submitted with the survey, questionnaire, or game that explains 1, what information would be gathered, 2, why this information would be important to a teacher, and 3, ways a teacher could incorporate this information into their classroom and lessons. The analysis must be written in APA format, and you're going to use these 3 prompts as your headings. But let's take a look at the requirements. So this rubric might look a little bit different from others that we've used, and rubrics this one's set up more like a Likert scale. In other words, you're moving along this rating scale. So right here is listed what the criteria would be. And if you meet these criteria, it's an excellent. And that's what I anticipate everybody doing and achieving on this, because I know you're just incredible kids. So the student fully explains what information will be collected and how this will be accomplished, and embeds a copy of the questionnaire or survey that will be given to the students. Some people choose to do a game. If you do a game, make sure you're explaining the rules to me. Student provides a strong rationale as to why this information would be important for a teacher. Student completely explains how this information will be used to support or engage learners. Next, the biblical principles of diversity are fully addressed using scriptural references as the driving support. And then finally, the paper is properly written in APA formatting with correct headings and citations. It also has correct spelling, usage, and punctuation throughout. So let's take a look at the sample APA that I put up there for you. So as with all assignments, I've given you a template to help you work through it. So here's your diversity activity template. Make sure you replace student name with your name. And then when you scroll down, you'll see information. That's your first heading. In this section, explain what information will be gathered and how this will be accomplished. In other words, will this be an in-class activity integrated into part of a lesson? Is it going to be a brain break? Is it going to be sent home? Then you want to put in your questionnaire, your survey, your activity. Include an upload or a copy of the survey, activity, or questionnaire you will use to gather information about your students' unique abilities, backgrounds, and interests, and you're going to put it here. Make sure if you do a link that the link is working. If the link isn't working and I can't access it, I can't grade you on this piece. Sometimes it's easier to just take a snapshot of what you've done and upload it, and I'll show you some student examples of this in a moment. And then your rationale. Explain in this section why each of the various elements of the gathered information were important. A first person is going to be allowed in this section. So for an example, question 5, what is your favorite activity outside of school? I chose this question to help me get to know students' interests so I can incorporate some of those things into my lessons. So you're justifying what's your rationale. And then finally, your usage. Give a specific example of how 3 questions, and you're only choosing 3 of the questions, not all of them, could be used in the classroom to support or engage learners. In other words, create your own scenario of how you could integrate what you learned into a lesson. So in other words, if you learned that Sam loves to play volleyball, how could you incorporate that into a lesson? And then finally, biblical principles. In this section, establish what the Bible tells us on how we are to love those from diverse backgrounds. This section is your conclusion, so explain how these principles should encourage us to find out more about our students and how we can best reach them. Now, let's take a look at some prior student examples of A work. This one here is an elementary example, and all these are on course pages on the initial folder for this activity. So you can read through what the student did, and then you can see she just snapped a picture of what her assignment's going to look like, and she created a diversity wheel as hers. And then she goes through her rationale and her usage and then her biblical principles. So this is one way you could do it. Now, this is an example of a middle grades one, and you can see it's not quite as color-based, although it is colorful. That's important to do. And she just snapped a picture. She had created this on Canva and did a screenshot rather than providing me a link so I could see it right away. And she also has the other criteria necessary. Let's take a look at a high school example. You can see in the high school sample, it's more of just question and answer. The questions are a little bit more in depth or geared to that higher level thinking or knowledge that students would have. So these are some student examples of prior work. Now, let me show you examples of different assignments located on the course page. When you're on the course page, you can click the drop-down menus and it'll show you the other examples. But I also put in here samples of different diversity activities. So here's an example. I am a rainbow. This is a picture of me. My hair is, my eyes are. You can see this is geared much more to elementary. Here's another elementary looking at the hands and colors. Then a diversity fingerprints, how we're different in so many ways. Now, keep in mind, these sample activities are there just to give you ideas of how to get started. You may not, under any circumstance, just copy and paste one of these sample activities or another one you find from Teacher Pay Teacher or online, because it will show up as plagiarism. And under the TED Handbook, you are to create and design your own activities. Now, that doesn't mean you can't use some question ideas and some activity ideas and make them your own. What it means is you cannot copy and paste, even with a citation. So make sure you're using this as a chance to be a little bit creative and figuring out how you can best get to know your students. And as always, if you have any questions, just reach out.